Good evening. Welcome to my stream. I am Nova Crusader, and we'll be reading The Morte D'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. It is about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. My speech is, well, I just effectively gave it. Let's begin. My microphone is in the way. Okay. Chapter 1. Now Uther Pendragon sent for the Duke of Cornwall, and Igraine his wife, and of their departing suddenly again. It befell in the days of Uther Pendragon, when he was king of all England, and so reigned, that there was a mighty duke in Cornwall, that held war against him long time. And the duke was called the Duke of Tintagel. And so by means King Uther sent for this duke, charging him to bring his wife with him, for she was called a fair lady, and a passing wise, and her name was called Igraine. So when the duke and his wife were come unto the king, by the means of great lords they were accorded both. The king liked and loved this lady well, and he made them great cheer out of measure, and desired to have lain by her. But she was a passing good woman, it would not assent unto the king. And when she told the duke her husband, and said, I suppose that we were sent for that I should be dishonored. Wherefore, husband, I counsel you, that we depart from hence suddenly, that we may ride all night unto our own castle. And likewise, as she said, so they departed, so that neither the king nor none of his council were aware of their departing. All so soon as King Uther knew of their departing so suddenly, he was wonderly wroth. Then he called to him his privy council, and told them of the sudden departing of the duke and his wife. Then they advised the king to send for the duke and his wife by the great charge, and if he will not come at your summons, then ye do your best. Then ye caused to make mighty war upon him. So that was done, and the messengers had answers, and that was the shortly, that neither he nor his wife would not come at him. Then was the king wonderly wroth, and then the king sent him plain word again, and bade him ready and stuff him and garnish him, for within 40 days he would fetch him out of the greatest castle that he hath. When the duke had this warning, anon he went and furnished and garnished 2 strong castles of his, of which was the height Tintagel, and the other height Terrible. So as his wife Dame Igraine he put in the castle of Tintagel, and he himself put in the castle of Terrible, the which had many issues and posterns out. Then in all haste came Uther with his great host, and laid a siege about the castle of Terrible, and there he pight many pavilions. There was great war made by both parties, and much people slain. Then for pure anger and for great love of fair Igraine, the king Uther fell sick. So came to the king Uther Sir Ulfius, a noble knight, and asked the king why he was ill. I shall tell thee, said the king. I am sick for anger and for love of fair Igraine, that I may not be whole. Well, my lord, said Sir Uther, I shall seek Merlin, and he shall do you remedy, that your heart shall be pleased. So Ulfius departed, and by adventure he met Merlin in beggar's array, and there Merlin asked Ulfius whom he sought, and he said he would little do to tell him. Well, said Merlin, I know whom thou seekest, for thou seekest Merlin, therefore seek no further, for I am he, and if King Uther will reward me, and be sworn unto me to fulfill my desire, that shall be his honour and profit more than mine, for I shall cause him to have all his desire. All this I will undertake, said Ulfius, that there shall be nothing reasonable, but thou shalt have thy desire. Well, said Merlin, he shall have his intent and desire, and therefore, said Merlin, ride on your way, for I will not be long behind. And that was chapter 1. So I'm thinking with this, is I read a chapter and ask if there are any comments or thoughts from the chat before I continue on to the next chapter. So I'll give you a moment to do so. And at some point in the future, I'll try to get some background music. Because as it is, it's just me. Yes. Yeah, the book starts with Uther's father, King Uther. And we have some adventures, I guess, with him. It is a bit challenging to read, especially later. You'll see what I mean, like, it gets kind of intense. This is not Old English, though. Otherwise, I'd have, like, 4 additional consonants. This is kind of a, like a mid-range English. After the great axing of, like, a whole bunch of consonants. I wonder if I could read it like this. The microphone and the pop filter are kind of in the way. I'm going to try doing this. Alright. We'll proceed to Chapter 2. Chapter 2. How Uther Pendragon made war on the Duke of Cornwall, and how by the means of Merlin he laid the Duchess in gat Arthur. Then Ulfius was glad, and rode on more than a pace till he came to King Uther Pendragon, and told him he had met with Merlin. Whereas he said to King, Sir, said Ulfius, he will not dwell long. Therewithal Ulfius was ware where Merlin stood at the porch of the pavilion's door. And then Merlin was bound to come to the king. When King Uther saw him, he said he was welcome. Sir, said Merlin, I know all your heart every deal. So ye will come, be sworn unto me, as ye be true king anointed, to fulfill my desire, ye shall have your desire. Then the king was sworn upon the 4 evangelists. Sir, said Merlin, this is my desire. The first night that ye lie by Mugraine, ye shall get a child on her, and when that is born, that it will be delivered to me for to nourish, there I will have it. For it will be your worship in the king's avail, as mickle as the child is worth. I will well, said the king, as thou wilt have it. Now make you ready, said Merlin. This night ye shall lie with Igraine in the castle terrible, and ye shall be like the duke, her husband. Ulfius shall be like Sir Bastius, a knight of the duke's. Now I will be like a knight that hight Sir Jordanus, a knight of the duke's. But wait ye, make not question her with her, nor her men. But ye say ye are deceased, and so hie you to bed, and rise not on the morn till I come to you. For the castle of Tintagel is about 10 miles hence. So this was done as they devised. And the Duke of Tintagel espied how the king rode from the siege of Terrible, and therefore that night he issued out of the castle as a postern, for to have distressed the king's host. And so, through his own issue, the duke himself was slain, or ever the king came to the castle of Tintagel. Alright, position of the book was not working. Gotta change it. Alright. So after the death of the duke, King Uther lay with Igraine more than 3 hours after his death, and begat on her that night Arthur. And on day came Merlin to the king, and bade him make him ready. So he kissed the Lady Igraine and departed in all haste. And when the lady heard of the duke her husband, and by all record he was dead, or ever King Uther came to her, then she marvelled that who might be that lay with her in the likeness of her lord. So she mourned privily, and held her peace. Then all the barons by one assent prayed the king to accord betwixt the Lady Igraine and him. The king gave them leave, for fain would he have accorded with her. So the king put all the trust in Ulfius to entreat between them. So by the entreaty at the last, the king and she met together. Now will we do well, said Ulfius. Our king is a lusty knight and wifeless, and by Lady Igraine is a passing fair lady. It were great joy unto us all, and it make please the king to make her his queen. Unto that well all accorded, and moved to the king. And anon, like a lusty knight, he assented thereto with good will, and so in all haste they were married in the morning with great mirth and joy. And King Lot the Lothian, and of Orkney, then wedded Margos, that was Gawaine's mother, and King Nentres of the land of Garlot wedded Elaine. All was done at the request of King Uther, and the third sister Morgan le Fay was put to school in a nunnery, and there she learned so much that she was a great clerk of necromancy. And after she was wedded to King Uriens of the land of Gore, that was Sir Egwene's La Blanchemain's father. That was chapter 2. In case that it wasn't clear, Merlin gave Uther and some other knights the appearance of other Cornwall knights, while Uther himself had the appearance of Duke Gorloy, Igraine's husband. So they were able to just sneak in, as long as they didn't talk. It's a challenging getting this book in a readable position. Any thoughts? If not, nope, head empty. Very good. And we shall continue to chapter 3. Of the birth of King Arthur and of his nurture. Then, hang on, I'm going to reposition this. And hopefully nothing will fall. Alright. Then Queen Igraine waxed daily greater and greater. So it befell after within half a year, as King Uther lay by his queen, he asked for her, by the faith she owed to him, whose was the body. Then she sore abashed to give answer. Dismay you not, said the king, but tell me the truth, that I shall tell you the better, or love you the better, by the faith of my body. Sir, said she, I shall tell you the truth. The same night that my lord was dead, the hour of his death, as his knights record, there came to my castle of Tintagel a man of my lord in speech and in consonance, and 2 knights with him in likeness of his knights, Brastius and Jordanus. So I was unto bed with him, as I ought to do with my lord, and on the same night, as I shall answer unto God, this child was begotten unto me, or upon me. That is truth, said the king, as you say, for I was myself that came in the likeness, and therefore dismay you not, for I am father of the child. And there he told her all the cause, how it was by Merlin's counsel. Then the queen made great joy, when she knew who was the father of her child. Soon came Merlin unto the king, and said, Sir, ye may purview you for the nourishing of her child, as thou dwelt, said the king, be it. Well, said Merlin, I know a lord of yours in this land, that is a passing true man and a faithful, and he shall have the nourishing of your child. And his name is Sir Ector, and he is the lord and fair livelihood of many parts in England and Wales. And this lord, Sir Ector, let him be sent for to come and speak with you, and desire him yourself, as he loveth you, that he will put his own child to nourishing to another woman, and that his wife nourish yours. And when the child is born, let it be delivered to me at yonder privy postern unchristened. So like as Merlin devised, it was done. And when Sir Ector was come, he made fiance to the king for the nourishing of the child as the king desired. And then there the king granted Sir Ector great rewards. When the lady was delivered, the king commanded 2 knights and 2 ladies to take the child, bound in a cloth of gold, and that ye deliver him to what poor man ye meet at the postern gate of the castle. So the child was delivered unto Merlin, and so he bare forth unto Sir Ector, and made an holy man to christen him, and named him Arthur. And so Sir Ector's wife nourished him with her own pap. Yes. And that's how Arthur was born. I'll just assume it's safe to continue to Chapter 4. Of the death of King Uther Pendragon. Then within 2 years King Uther fell sick of a great malady. In the meanwhile his enemies usurped upon him, and he did great battle upon his men, and slew many of his people. Sir, said Merlin, ye may not lie as ye do, for ye must be to the field, though ye ride on a horse litter. For ye shall never have the better of your enemies, but if your person be there, then shall ye have the victory. So it was done as Merlin had devised, and they carried the king forth in a horse litter with a great host towards his enemies. And at St. Albans there met with the king a great host of the north. And that day Sir Ulfius and Sir Brastias did great deeds of arms, and King Uther's men overcame the northern battle, and slew many people, and put the remnant to flight. And then the king returned unto London, and made great joy of his victory. And then he fell passing sore sick, so that 3 days and 3 nights he was speechless. Wherefore all the barons made great sorrow, and asked Merlin what counsel were best. There is none other remedy, said Merlin, but God will have his will. But look ye all barons, be before King Uther to mourn, and God and I shall make him to speak. So on the morn all the barons with Merlin came to before the king. Then Merlin said aloud unto King Uther, Sir, your son Arthur be king after your days, of his realm with all the appurtenance. Then Uther Pendragon turned him, and said in hearing of all, I give him God's blessing and mine, and bid him pray for my soul, and righteously and worshipfully that he claim the crown, upon forfeiture of my blessing. And therefore he yielded up his ghost, and then he was interred as longed to a king. Wherefore the queen, Fair Igraine, made great sorrow in all the barons. Now it's Chapter 4. Any thoughts? Still head empty? I'm only 20 minutes into this. I feel like I've been reading for a half hour. Suppose we will continue. Chapter 5. How Arthur was chosen king, and of the wonders and marvels of a sword taken out of a stone by a said Arthur. Then stood the realm in great jeopardy for a long while, for every lord that was mighty of men made him strong, and many weened to have been king. Then Merlin went to the Archbishop of Canterbury, and counselled him for to send for all the lords of the realm, and all the gentlemen of arms, that they should be to London come upon Christmas, upon pain of cursing, and for this cause, that Jesus, that was born on that night, that he would of his great mercy show some miracle, as he was come to the king of mankind, for to show some miracle, who would be rightwise king of this realm. So the archbishop, by the advice of Merlin, sent for the lords and gentlemen of arms, that they should come by Christmas unto London, even unto London. And many of them made them clean of their life, that their prayer might be the more acceptable to God. So in the greatest church of London, whether it were Paul's or not, the French book maketh no mention. All the states were long or day in the church for to pray. And when matins and the first mass was done, there was seen in the churchyard, against the high altar, a great stone 4 square, like unto marble stone. In the midst therefore was an anvil of steel, a foot on high, and therein stuck a fair sword naked by the point. And letters were written in gold about the sword, that said thus: Whoso pulleth this sword of the stone and anvil is rightwise king born of all England. Then the people marveled, and told it to the archbishop. I command, said the archbishop, that ye keep you within your church, and pray unto God still, that no man touch the sword till the high mass be all done. So when all the masses were done, all the lords went to behold the sword in the stone. And when they saw the scriptures, some essayed, such as would have been king, but none might stir the sword nor move it. He is not here, said the archbishop, that shall achieve the sword, but doubt not God will make him known. But this is my counsel, said the archbishop, that we let purvey 10 knights, men of good fame, and they to keep the sword. So it was ordained, and then there was made a cry, that every man should assay that would, for to win the sword. And upon New Year's Day the barons And upon New Year's Day the barons let make a joust and a tournament, and all the knights that would joust or tourney there might play. And all this was ordained for to keep the Lord together in the commons. For the archbishop trusted that God would make him known that should win the sword. So upon New Year's Day, when the service was done, the barons rode unto the field, some to joust and some to tourney. And so it happened that Sir Ector, that had great livelihood about London, rode unto the jousts, and with them rode Sir Kay his son, and young Arthur that was his nourished brother. And Sir Kay was made knight at All Hallowmass afore. So as they rode to the joust ward, Sir Kay lost his sword, for he had left it at his father's lodging. And so he prayed young Arthur for to ride for his sword. I will well, said Arthur, and rode fast after the sword. And when he came home, the lady and all were out to see the jousting. Then Arthur wroth, and said to himself, I will ride to the churchyard, and take the sword with me that sticketh in the stone, for my brother Sir Kay shall not be without a sword this day. So when he came to the churchyard, Sir Arthur alighted and tied his horse to the stile. And so he went to the tent, and found no knights there, for they were jousting. And so he handled the sword by the handles, and lightly and fiercely pulled it out of the stone, and took his horse and rode his way until he came to his brother Sir Kay, and delivered him the sword. As soon as Sir Kay saw the sword, he wist well it was the sword of the stone. And so he rode to his father Sir Ector, and said, Sir, lo, here is the sword of the stone, wherefore I must be king of this land. When Sir Ector beheld the sword, he returned again and came to the church. And there they alighted all three, and went into the church. And anon he made Sir Kay swear upon a book how he came to that sword. Sir, said Sir Kay, by my brother Arthur, for he brought it to me. How gat ye this sword? Said Sir Ector to Arthur. Sir, I will tell you. When I came home from my brother's sword, I found nobody at home to deliver this sword. And so I thought my brother Sir Kay would not be swordless, and so I came hither eagerly, and pulled it out of the stone without any pain. Found ye any knights about this sword? Said Sir Ector. Nay, said Arthur. Now, said Sir Ector to Arthur, I understand ye must be king of this land. Wherefore I, said Arthur, and for what cause? Sir, said Ector, for God will have it so, and there should never man have drawn out of this sword, and he that be rightwise king of this land. Now let me see whether ye can pull, or put the sword there as it was, and pull it out again. That is no master, said Arthur, and so he put it in the stone. Wherewithal Sir Ector essayed to pull out the sword and failed. So, kind of a funny situation. With his brother not having a sword, Arthur couldn't find one, and so he just pulled the sword from the stone without any issue and delivered it. At which point their father then investigated it and made Arthur put the sword back in just to try it out himself, and he could not pull it because, it's enchanted. Chapter 6. How King Arthur pulled out the sword divers times. Now assay, said Sir Ector unto Sir Kay. And anon he pulled at the sword with all his might, but it would not be. Now shall ye say, said Sir Ector to Arthur. I will well, said Arthur, and pulled it out easily. And therewithal Sir Ector knelt down to the earth, and Sir Kay, Alas, said Arthur, by my own dear father and brother, why ye kneel to me? Nay, nay, said my lord Arthur, it is not so. I was never your father, nor of your blood, but I wot well ye are of a higher blood than I weened ye are. And then Sir Ector told him all, how he was betaken him for to nourish him, and by whose commandment, and by Merlin's deliverance. Then Arthur made great dole, when he understood that Ector was not his father. Sir, said Ector unto Arthur, will ye be my good and gracious lord when ye are king? Else were I to blame, said Arthur, for ye are the man in the world that I am most beholden to, and my good lady and mother your wife, that as well as her own hath fostered me and kept. And if ever it be God's will that I be king as ye say, ye shall desire of me that what I may do, and I shall not fail you. God forbid I should fail you. Said Sir, said Sir Ector, I will ask no more of you, and that ye will make my son, your foster brother, Sir Kay, seneschal of all your lands. That shall be done, said Arthur, and more by the faith of my body, that never man shall have that office but he, while he and I live. Therewithal they went unto the archbishop, and told him the sword was achieved, and by whom. And on the 12th day all the barons came hither, and to assay to take the sword, though that would assay. And there afore them there might none take it but Arthur. Wherefore there were many lords wroth and said it was great shame unto them all in the realms to be overgoverned by a boy of no high blood born. And so they fell out at that time that it was put off until Candlemas, and then all the barons should meet there again. But always the 10 knights were ordained to watch the sword day and night, and so they set a pavilion over the stone in the sword, and 5 always watched. So at Candlemas many more great lords came thither for to have won the sword, and there might none prevail. And right as Arthur did at Christmas, he did at Candlemas, and pulled out the sword easily, whereof the barons were sore aggrieved, and put it off in delay till the high feast of Easter. And as Arthur sped before, as he did at Easter. Yet there was some of the great lords had indignation that Arthur should be king, and put it off in delay till the feast of Pentecost. Then the Archbishop of Canterbury by Merlin's providence let purview then of the great knights that they might get, and such knights as Uther Pendragon loved best and most trusted in his days. And such knights were about Arthur as Sir Bodwin of Britain, Sir Kay, Sir Ulfius, Sir Brastias. All these, with many others, were always about Arthur day and night till the feast of Pentecost. That was chapter 6. I need to hydrate. One moment. Don't forget to hydrate, chat. Any questions? I know the wording can be a little confusing at times. Water, my beloved, indeed. If not, then we will continue. Chapter 7. How King Arthur was crowned, and how he made officers. The wording is a bit hard to follow. Well, like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. I know the story pretty good, so all this makes sense to me. Because I played King Arthur Pendragon, the RPG. And it goes through pretty much the entirety of this book, and then some. So playing through it kind of gives you an insight. Also, I'm aware that my stumbling over words isn't helping, because it is kind of hard to read out loud. So let's continue at chapter 7. And at the feast of Pentecost, all manner of men essayed to pull at the sword that would essay, but none might prevail but Arthur, and pulled it out afore all the lords and commons that were there. And wherefore all the commons cried at once, We will have Arthur unto our king. We will put him no more in delay, for we all see that it is God's will that he shall be our king, and who that holdeth against it, we will slay him. And therewithal they kneeled at once, both rich and poor, and cried Arthur mercy before they had delayed him so long. And Arthur forgave them, and took the sword between both his hands, and offered it upon the altar where the archbishop was. And so he made knight of the best man that was there. And so anon was the coronation made. And there was he sworn unto his lords and the commons for to be a true king, and to stand with pure justice from thenceforth the days of his life. Also then he made all lords that held of the crown to come in, and to do service as they ought to do. And many complaints were made unto Sir Arthur of great wrongs that were done since the death of King Uther, and of many lands that were bereaved, lords, knights, ladies, and gentlemen. And wherefore King Arthur made the lands to be given unto them that owned them. ESL, really? I mean, you wanna read this, buddy? Read this, friend. When this was done, that the king had established all the countries about London, then he let make Sir Kay seneschal of England, and Sir Bodwin of Britain was made constable, and Sir Ulfius was made chamberlain, and Sir Brastias was made warden to wait unto the north from Trent forwards, for it was that time the most party the king's enemies. But within 4 years after Arthur won all the north, Scotland, and all that was made under their obeisance, also Wales a part of it, held against Uther, Arthur, but he overcame them all, and he did the remnant through the noble prowess of himself and the knights of the Round Table. I have to slowly move the book so I can turn the page. That was also the finishing of that chapter. Alright. The main problem with my microphone setup for this is the arm holding the microphone literally runs across where I'd put the book. So I have to hold it at weird angles. Chapter 8. How King Arthur held in Wales and at Pentecost the great feast, and what kings and lords came to his feast. I can't hold the book like that, otherwise I start bouncing around. When the king removed into Wales and let cry a great feast, that it should be holden at Pentecost, after the incoronation of him at the city of Carlisle. Unto the feast came King Lot of Lothian and of Orkney, and 500 knights with him. And so there came to the feast King Uriens of Gore with 400 knights with him. Also there came to the feast King Nentres of Garlot with 700 knights with him. Also there came to the feast the King of Scotland with 600 knights with him, and he was but a young man. Sorry about that. Also there came to the feast a king that was called the King of 100 Knights, and he and his men were passing well beseen at all points. Also there came the King of Carados with 500 knights, and King Arthur was glad of their coming, for he weened that all the kings and knights that come for great love, and to have done him worship at his feast. Wherefore the king made great joy, and sent the kings and knights great presents. But the kings would not receive, but rebuked the messengers shamefully, and said they had no joy to receive no gifts of a beardless boy that was come of low blood, and sent him word that they would none of his gifts, and that they were come to give him gifts with hard swords betwixt the necks of the shoulders. And therefore they came thither, and so told the messengers plainly, for it was great shame to all of them to see such a boy to have a rule over so noble a realm as this land was. With this answer the messengers departed and told King Arthur this answer. Wherefore by the advice of his barons he took him to a strong tower with 500 good men with him, and all the kings aforesaid in a manner laid a siege to afore him. But King Arthur was well victualled. Within 15 days there came Merlin among them to the city of Carlisle. Then all the kings were passing glad of Merlin, and asked him, For what cause that boy Arthur made your king? Sirs, said Merlin, I shall tell you the cause, for he is King Uther Pendragon's son, born in wedlock, gotten on Igraine, the duke's wife of Tintagel. Then he is a bastard, they said all. Nay, said Merlin, after the death of the duke, more than 3 hours, Arthur was begotten, and 13 days after King Uther wedded Igraine. Therefore I prove that he is no bastard. And who saith nay, he shall be king and overcome all his enemies, and or he die, he shall be long king of all England, and have under his abbeisance Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, and more realms that I will now rehearse. Some of the kings had marvelled of Merlin's words, and deemed well that it should be as he said, and some of them laughed him to scorn, as King Lot, and more other called him a witch. And they were accorded with Merlin, that King Arthur should come out and speak with the kings, and to come safe and to go safe. Such assurance there was made. So Merlin went unto King Arthur, and told him how he had done, and bade him fear not, but to come out boldly and speak with them. and spare them not, but answer them as their king and chieftain. For ye shall overcome them all, whether they will or nill. Chapter 9. Of the first war that King Arthur had, and how he won the field. And how I conduct a war to position this book so I can easily read it. Might need to adjust my setup for next time. Then King Arthur came out of his tower, and had under his gown a jusserent of double mail, and therewith went with him the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Sir Bodwin of Britain, and Sir Kay, and Sir Brastias. These were the men of the most worship that were with him. And when they were met with no mere meekness, but stout words on both sides, but always King Arthur answered them, and said he would make them to bow, and he lived. Wherefore they departed with wrath, and King Arthur bade them keep well, and they bade the king keep him well. So the king returned to the tower again, and armed him and all his knights. What will ye do? Said Merlin to the kings. Ye were better for to stint, for he shall not here prevail, though ye were 10 times so many. But we will well advise to be afeard of a dream reader, said King Lot. With that Merlin vanished away, and came to King Arthur, and bade him set on them fiercely. In the meanwhile there were 300 good men, and of the best that were with the kings, that went straight unto King Arthur, and that comforted him greatly. Sir, said Merlin to Arthur, fight not with the sword that ye had by miracle, till that ye see ye go unto the worse. Then draw it out and do your best. So forthwithal King Arthur set out upon them in their lodging. And Sir Bodwin, Sir Kay, and Sir Brastias slew on the right hand and on the left hand, that it was marvel. And always King Arthur on horseback laid with the sword, and did marvellous deeds of arms, and many of the kings had great joy of his deeds and hardiness. Then King Lot broke out on the backside, and the king with 100 knights, and King Carados, and set on Arthur fiercely behind him. With that Sir Arthur turned with his knights, and smote behind and before, and ever Sir Arthur was in the foremost, pressed till his horse was slain underneath him. And therewith King Lot smote down King Arthur, and with that 400 knights received him, and set him on horseback. Then he drew his sword Excalibur, but it was so bright in the enemy's eyes, that it gave light like 30 torches. And therewith he put them aback, and slew much people. And then the commons of Carlisle arose with clubs and staves, and slew many knights. But all the kings held them together with their knights that were left alive, and so fled and departed. And Merlin came unto Arthur, and counselled him to follow them no further. So, beginning of a particularly important battle against King Lot and the northern kings and surrounding territories. One thing that was said that Arthur was smote. Keep in mind, smote means to be driven to the ground, or forced to the ground. So basically, it was knocked off his horse and he fell. It's not like the more modern use of the word where it means to, kill someone. Because that's not what that means in this book. It means you got knocked off the horse usually. Or just fell on the ground. but always by force of something else. Alright. Chapter 10. Fancy words, indeed. They use many fancy words in this book. If modern person was transported back in the past, we'd sound like mere children to them. At least to the nobility in the people church. Because, they did all the writing. Alright, chapter 10. They struggle to find a good placement for the book. And my camera. How Merlin counseled King Arthur to send for King Ban and King Bors, and other counsel taken for the war. So after the feast and journey, King Arthur drew him unto London, and so by the counsel of Merlin, the king let calls barons to the council. For Merlin was told the king that the 6 kings that made war upon him would in all haste be a roke on him and on his lands. Wherefore the king asked counsel to them all. They could no counsel give, and said they were big enough. Ye say well, said Arthur. I thank you for your good courage, but will ye that all loveth me speak with Merlin? Ye know well that he hath done much for me, and he knoweth many things, and when he is afore you, I would that ye prayed him heartily of his great advice. And all the barons said they would pray him and desire him. So Merlin was sent for, and fair desired of all the barons, to give them great counsel. I shall say you, said Merlin, I warn you all, your enemies are passing strong for you, and they are good men of arms to be alive, and by this time they have gotten to them 4 kings more, and a mighty duke, unless that our king have made chivalry with him, then he may make within the bounds of his own realm. Then he fight with them in battle, he shall be overcome and slain. What were best to do in this cause, said all the barons. I shall tell you, said Merlin. Mine advice. There are 2 brethren beyond the sea, they be kings both, and marvellous good men of their hands, and that one hight King Ban of Benwick, and the other hight King Bors of Gaul, that is France. And on these 2 kings wareth a mighty man of men, the King Claudius, and striveth with them for a castle, and great wars betwixt them. But this Claudius is so mighty of goods, whereof he getteth good knights, but that he putteth these 2 kings most part to be worse. Wherefore this is my counsel, that our king and sovereign lords send unto Kings Ban and Bors by 2 trusty knights with letters well devised, and that they come and see King Arthur and his council, and so help him in his wars. That he will be sworn unto them to help them in their wars against King Claudius. Now, what say ye unto this counsel, said Merlin. This is well counselled, said the king and all the barons. Right so in all haste they were ordained to go 2 knights on the message unto 2 kings. So there were made letters in the pleasant wise according by King Arthur's desire. Ulfius and Brastius were made the messengers, and so rode forth well horsed and well armed, and as the guise was that time, and so passed the sea and rode toward the city of Benwick. And there besides were 8 knights that espied them, and at the straight passage they met with Ulfius and Brastius, and were taken them prisoners. So they prayed them that they might pass, for they were messengers unto King Bans and Bors, sent by King Arthur. Therefore said the 8 knights, Ye shall die or be prisoners, for we be knights of King Claudius. And therewith 2 of them dressed their spears, and Ulfius and Brastius dressed their spears, and ran together with great rondon. And Claudius's knights broke their spears, and theirs to held and bare the 2 knights out of their saddles to the earth, and so left them lying, and rode their ways. And the other 6 knights rode afore to a passage to meet with them again. And so Ulfius and Brastius smote 2 down, and so passed on their ways. At the 4th passage there met 2 for 2, and both were laid unto the earth. So there was none of the 8 knights, but he was sore hurt and bruised. And when they came to Benwick, it fortuned that they were both knights, bonds and boors. And when it was told to the kings, there were some that there were come messengers. They were sent unto them 2 knights of worship, the one hight Lionses, lord of the country of Pt.1, and Sir Thomas, a worshipful knight. Anon they asked from whence they came, and they said, from King Arthur, King of England. And so they took them in their arms, and made great joy of each other. But anon as the 2 kings wist, they were messengers of Arthur's, that they were made no tarrying. And forthwith they spake with the knights, and welcomed them in their faithfullest wise, and said that they were most welcome unto them, for all the kings liveth. And therewith they kissed the letters and delivered them. And when bond and boors understood the letters, when they were more welcome than they were before, and after the haste of the letters, they gave them this answer, that they would fulfill the desire of King Arthur's writing, and Ulfius and Brastius tarried there as long as they would. They should have such cheer as might be made them in those marches. Then Ulfius and Brastius told the kings of the adventures at their passages of the 8 knights. Ha ha, said bond and boors. They were my good friends. I would I had wist them of them. They should not have escaped so. So Ulfius and Brastius made good cheer in great gifts, as much as they might bear away, and had their answer by mouth and by writing. And those 2 kings would come unto Arthur, and all the haste they might. So the 2 knights rode on afore, and passed the sea, and came to their lord, and told him that they had sped, whereof King Arthur was passing glad. And what time suppose ye 2 knights will be here? Sir, they said, afore all Hallowmas. Then the king let purview for a great feast, and let cry a great joust. And by all Hallowmas the 2 kings were come over the sea, with 300 knights all arrayed, both for the peace and for the war. And King Arthur met with them 10 mile out of London, and there was great joy, as could be thought of or made. And on all Hallowmas and at the great feast sat in the hall the great kings, or 3 kings, and Sir Kay Seneschal served in the hall, and Sir Lucas the butler, and there was Duke Corneus the son, and Sir Griflet, that was the son of Cordel. These 3 knights had the rule of all the service that served the kings, and anon as they washen and risen, all knights that would joust made them ready. By then they were ready on horseback. There were 700 knights, and Arthur, bond and boors, with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Sir Ector, Kay's father. They were in a place covered with cloth of gold like in the hall, with ladies and gentlewomen, for to behold who did best, and therein to give judgment. Now it's chapter 10. Any comments, questions? Yes, it is a challenge to read. Let's see. Alright, we'll read chapter 11 and 12. And then I think I'll call it there. I was reading for an hour. Kinda wears out the voice. It's a bit different than just talking. Alright. And yes, I'll definitely need to work on my desk setup for next time I do this. Of a great tourney made, or this is chapter 11 by the way, of a great tourney made by King Arthur and the two kings, Bons and Bors, and how they went over the sea. And King Arthur and the two kings let depart 700 knights in two parties, and there were 300 knights of the realm of Benwick and of Gaul turned on the other side. Then they dressed their shields, and began to couch their spears, many good knights. So Griflet was the first that met with the knight, one Ladanus, and they met so eagerly that all men had wonder. And so they fought for their shields fell to the pieces, and horse and man fell to earth. And both the French knight and English knight lay so long that all men weened that they had been dead. When Lucas the butler saw Griflet so lie, he horsed him again anon, and they too did marvelous deeds of arms with many bachelors. Also Sir Kay came out of an ambush with 5 knights with him, and they 6 smote other 6 down. But Sir Kay did that day marvelous deeds of arms, and there was great none did so well as he had that day. Then there came Ladanus and Gracian, 2 knights of France, and did passing well, that all men praised them. Then there came Sir Placidus, a good knight, and met with Sir Kay, and smote him down horse and man. And wherefore Sir Griflet was wroth, met with Sir Placidus so hard that horse and man fell to the earth. But when the 5 knights wist that Sir Kay had a fall, they were wroth out of wit, and therefore each of them 5 bare down a knight. When King Arthur and the 2 kings saw them begin to wax wroth on both parties, they leapt on small hackneys, and let cry that all men should depart up unto their lodging. And so they went home and unarmed, and so to evensong and supper. And after the 3 kings went into the garden, and gave the prize unto Sir Kay, and to Lucas the butler, and unto Sir Griflet. And they went into the council, and with them Gwembos, the brother unto Sir Bon and Bors, a wise clerk, and thither went Ulfius and Brastius and Merlin. And after they had been in council, they went unto bed. And on the morn they heard mass and to dinner, and so to their council, and made many arguments what were best to do. At the last they were concluded, and Merlin should go with the token of King Bon, and that was a ring unto his men and King Bors. And Gracian and Placidus should go again, and keep their castles and their countries. As for dread of King Claudas, King Bon and Benwick, and King Bors of Gaul had ordained them, and so passed the sea and came into Benwick. And when the people saw King Bon's ring, and Gracian and Placidus, they were glad, and asked how the kings fared, and made great joy of their welfare in courting. And in courting unto the sovereign lord's desire, the men of war made them ready in all haste possible, so that they were 15,000 on horse and foot, and they made plenty of victual with them, by Merlin's provision. But Gracian and Placidus were left to furnish and garnish the castles, for dread of King Claudas. Right so Merlin passed the sea, well victualled both by water and by land. And when they came to the sea, he went home with footmen again, and took no more with him but 10,000 men on horseback, and most part men of arms, and so shipped and passed the sea into England, and passed by, and landed at Dover. And through the wit of Merlin, he had the host northward, and previous way that he thought, or bethought, unto the forest of Bedegraine, and there in the valley he lodged them secretly. Then rode Merlin unto Arthur and 2 kings, and told them how he had sped, whereof they would great marvel, and man on earth might speed so soon, and go and come. So Merlin told them 10,000 were in the forest of Bedegraine, well armed at all points. Then there was no more to say, but to horseback went all the host of Arthur, as afore previewed. So with 20,000 he passed by night and day, And there was made such an ordinance afore Merlin, that there should be no man of war ride nor go in no country on this side Trent water. And if he had a token with King Arthur, wherethrough the king's enemies durst not ride, so they did to fore to spy. Chapter 12. How 11 kings gathered a great host against King Arthur. And so within little space the 3 kings came into the castle of Bedegraine, and found there a passing fair fellowship, and well beseen, whereof they had great joy, and victual they wanted none. This was the cause of the northern host, that they were reared for the despite and rebuke the 6 kings had at Carline. And those 6 kings, by their means, gat unto them 5 other kings, and thus they began to gather their people. And now they swear that for weal or woe, that they should not leave other till they had destroyed Arthur. And then they made an oath. The first that began the oath was Duke of Cabinet, that he would bring with him 5,000 men of arms, and which were ready on horseback. Then swore King Brandegorse of Strangor, that he would bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. Then sware King Clarence of Northumberland, that he would bring 3,000 men of arms. Then sware the King of the 100 Knights, that was passing good man and a young, that he would bring 4,000 knights, or men of arms on horseback. Then there swore King Lot, a passing good knight, and Sir Gawaine's father, that he would bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. Also there swore King Uriens, that was Egwene's father, of the land of Gore, that he would bring 6,000 knights of men of arms on horseback. Also there swore King Idris of Cornwall, that he would bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. Also there swore King Cradlemas to bring 5,000 men on horseback. Also there swore King Agwisance of Ireland to bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. Also there swore King Nentrus to bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. Also there swore King Carados to bring 5,000 men of arms on horseback. So their whole host was of clean men of arms on horseback, 50,000, and a foot 10,000 of good men's bodies. Then they were soon ready, and mounted upon horse, and sent forth their 4 riders. For these 11 kings in their ways had laid a siege unto the castle of Bedegraine. And so they departed and drew toward Arthur, and left few to abide at the siege, for the castle of Bedegraine was beholden of King Arthur, and the men that were therein were Arthur's. Now it's chapter 12. Oops. So to clarify a little bit of that, when the 2 kings came over and, brought their knights, Merlin was basically using his magic to speed things up for their travels, which is why everyone was so surprised that they were able to reinforce at Bedegraine so quickly. And of course we have the northern kings and their allies saying what they were going to commit to the battle. So, interesting experiment, reading a book. What did you guys think? Should I do more of these? Should I have background music? Or is just me reading the book good enough? Let me know in the chat. The silence. I mean, I like reading it. It's not the first time I've really done it. BGM would be nice. I'll look into it then. It's kind of hard finding music, to be honest. Especially music that would be sounding kind of appropriate. But I'll look into that further. But was there be any interest in further readings? It's okay to say no. Alright, we'll do some more then. We'll continue with the book. There's plenty more. It's a pretty long story. Yeah, having music would actually be pretty good right now. Especially while I'm waiting for responses or whatever. Alright, we'll call it here then. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. Goodbye.